It was the scream that I'll never forget, piercing, echoing through our quiet town, ripping the ordinary from our lives. My best friends Sarah, Ben and I were biking home after a long day of shooting footage for our school project when it happened. We turned a corner and the world seemed to blur as we skidded to a stop in front of an old house that had an estate sale sign. That scream! It came from here, Ben shouted, his eyes wide. Sarah, always the voice of reason, hesitated. Shouldn't we call someone? But I felt a pull, an inexplicable need to explore. Come on, I said, heading towards a pile of old books and papers that lay scattered across the lawn. I could feel my heart race, sensing that something big was about to happen. Sarah and Ben reluctantly followed, and that's when we discovered the journal. The leather cover was worn, pages yellowed. It looked ancient. My fingers skimmed the pages, each filled with descriptions of a sinister creature known as the Rake. The writing was erratic, hurried, as if the writer was in a rush to document every chilling detail. It spoke of talon-like fingers, of haunting whispers, of lost souls. This is insane, Ben said, his voice shaky. Listen to this. The Rake knows all, reveals all. One look and you're its prisoner. Sarah shivered, clutching her jacket tighter. It's just a myth, right? But the doubt in her eyes spoke volumes. A sense of foreboding hung in the air. The sun set, casting eerie shadows over the lawn. We should have left right then, but curiosity rooted us in place. You guys ever hear about old Mr. Thompson? A voice from behind startled us. An elderly woman, a neighbor I presumed, was watching us from her porch. No, I replied, a bit on edge. Who's he? She took a deep breath, her voice taking on a faraway tone. He lived here long ago. They say he went mad, kept babbling about the Rake. Disappeared one night. No one knows what happened to him. Sarah gulped. Do you believe in it? The woman hesitated. All I'll say is, be careful what you seek. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. The weight of her words pressed on us. As we rode home, the chill of the night wasn't the only thing causing goosebumps on my skin. I felt eyes on us, watching, waiting. The journal sat heavy in my bag, a key to a door we perhaps shouldn't open. But deep down, a burning desire to know the truth consumed me. For better or worse, our journey with the Rake had just begun. The next few days felt like a blur of excitement and dread. Every time I closed my eyes, images of the Rake haunted my dreams. Whispers filled my ears, never clear enough to understand, but always there, lingering. I had hoped my friends felt differently, but as we met at school, the tension was evident. Sarah looked particularly drained, her usually bright eyes clouded with dark circles. Didn't sleep? I asked, knowing the answer. She shook her head. The journal. I kept hearing those whispers. Ben, who had been flipping through his camera footage, paused. You heard them too? Our eyes met. An understanding passed between us. This was real, too real. That day, as school ended, we found ourselves at the local library. We needed answers. The librarian, Miss Harris, directed us to the town archives. Dusty old newspaper clippings, stories passed down through generations, and there it was, a picture blurred but unmistakably similar to the Rake's description from the journal. The headline read, "Mysterious disappearances plague town. Is the Rake real?" Look at this, Sarah whispered, pointing at a series of articles detailing similar events, always linked to the Rake. The most recent one dated back 10 years. As we delved deeper, an old photo caught my eye. A group of kids around our age. Scribbled on the back was, "The last to seek the Rake, 1983. One of the faces seemed oddly familiar. That's Mr. Jacobs, our history teacher," Ben exclaimed. That evening we confronted Mr. Jacobs. Initially hesitant, he finally relented when we showed him the photo. "We were young, curious, just like you," he began, his voice shaking. "We'd heard the legends and decided to find out for ourselves. It started as a game, an adventure, until we met the Rake." His gaze turned distant. "It whispers, you know, things you don't want to hear, things you can't forget. Two of my friends, they couldn't handle it. They vanished. We never found them." We exchanged nervous glances, the weight of our decisions pressing on us. "You need to stop," Mr. Jacobs warned, "before it's too late." But as we left, I felt torn. The logical part of me wanted to forget everything, but another part, the curious part, wanted to know more, wanted to face the Rake and put an end to this. The evening was setting in, casting eerie silhouettes against the twilight. As I headed home, the familiar sensation of being watched crept over me. Quickening my pace, a chilling whisper grazed my ear. "Seeking answers, are we?" My heart raced. The shadows seemed to move, to shift, and for a brief moment I thought I saw it. The Rake. Fear gripped me. Were we digging too deep, or was this our chance to end the cycle of terror? I raced to Sarah's house, the chilling encounter fresh in my mind. As I knocked frantically on her door, it swung open to reveal Ben, pale and wide-eyed. "Where were you?" he exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. "After you didn't answer any calls, we thought—" His voice trailed off, the unspoken fear evident. I quickly recounted my encounter, my hands shaking as I described the whisper and the brief glimpse of the Rake. Sarah hugged her knees, her face pale. "We're in too deep," she whispered. "We need a plan," Ben declared. "We need to face this thing head on." Sarah shook her head, the weight of our decisions taking its toll. "It's not a game, Ben. We're playing with something we don't understand." While they argued, I sifted through the journal again, searching for answers, and then I found it, a passage that stood out. "To face the Rake is to know oneself. Its power lies in our fears, our secrets. Confront it with truth, and only then can you break free." A plan began to form in my mind. "We need to confront it," I interrupted, relaying the journal entry. Ben nodded, determination lighting up his face. "All right, we face it together." Sarah hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty. "Okay," she whispered, "but we need to be careful." Armed with flashlights, cameras, and the journal, we headed to the woods near the old Thompson house. Legend said that the Rake often lurked there, especially on moonless nights. The forest was eerily silent. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath our feet. Suddenly, a cold wind blew and the familiar whisper filled the air. "Why seek what should not be found?" Sarah shivered. "We have to be honest with ourselves and each other. That's our weapon." Taking a deep breath, I started. "I've always felt responsible for my little sister's accident. I should have been watching her." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. I'm adopted. I've always felt out of place, unwanted." Ben hesitated before admitting, "I always act strong, but inside I'm terrified of being alone." As we shared our truths, the atmosphere lightened. We ventured deeper, reaching a clearing. In the moonlight, we saw it, the Rake. Its eyes, devoid of emotion, stared at us, but it didn't approach. It simply watched. We held hands, forming a united front, our confessions our shield. "We're not afraid of you," Ben shouted. The Rake tilted its head, the whisper echoing once more, "You've understood." With that, it slowly retreated, disappearing into the shadows. As dawn approached, we left the woods, the weight lifted from our shoulders. The Rake was no longer a menace lurking in the dark. It was a reminder of the strength that lay in facing our fears. Life after confronting the Rake seemed almost idyllic. The weight of our secrets no longer held power over us, and our bond as friends deepened. We became local legends, the trio that faced the darkness and emerged unscathed. One evening, about a month after our encounter, I sat in my room replaying the footage Ben had captured that night. The grainy images showed the clearing, the dark figure of the Rake, and us confronting it. But as I watched, I noticed something. An additional shadow, lurking just beyond the clearing, unnoticed by us at the time. The next day at school, I showed it to Sarah and Ben. Sarah's face paled. "What? What if there's more than one?" Ben frowned, replaying the clip. "Or someone else was watching us, someone interested in the Rake." We agreed to investigate after school. As night fell, we ventured to the clearing again, searching for any clues. Ben's flashlight landed on a small makeshift camp, hidden among the trees. Papers were strewn about, notes on the Rake, drawings, and a photo of us. Sarah picked up a diary, similar to the old journal, but newer. "It's Mr. Thompson's," she whispered, recognizing the handwriting from old school assignments. The entries were frantic, detailing his obsession with the Rake, his regret for leaving the town, and his determination to capture the creature. The most recent entry spoke of watching us, of realizing the importance of confronting one's fears, and of a plan to face the Rake himself. "We have to find him," I said. A sense of urgency took over. The woods felt different this time, more menacing. As we followed a trail leading deeper into the forest, we heard a distant scream. Panic set in as we ran towards the sound. We found Mr. Thompson, his eyes wild with terror, the Rake standing before him. He was paralyzed with fear, his truth seemingly too great to speak. We had to intervene. Together we shouted our truths, the ones we had shared that night, pulling the Rake's attention towards us. Mr. Thompson, seizing the distraction, shouted his truth. I abandoned my town, my students. I thought I was protecting them, but I was running away. With that confession, the Rake's form seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a bewildered Mr. Thompson. Gratefully, he hugged us. You saved me. I let my guilt consume me for years, but now, thanks to you, I'm free. The days that followed Mr. Thompson's rescue brought a wave of changes. The teacher, once a recluse, transformed into a warm and open individual, often sharing stories from his past and expressing gratitude for a second chance at life. Our town, previously gripped by old legends and fears, began to heal, the tale of the Rake slowly fading into obscurity. One evening, as autumn leaves painted the town in hues of gold and red, Sarah invited us over for a small gathering. I found some old records in our attic, she began, laying out dusty vinyl discs. Figured we could use some classic tunes. As the record player hummed to life, an old melody filled the room. We laughed, danced, and for a while it seemed like the darkness was behind us, until the music suddenly warped, slowing to a distorted crawl. The cheerful tune turned eerie, replaced by a voice, crackled but clear. You cannot forget. The room fell silent, our cheerful moods replaced by creeping dread. Ben cautiously approached the player, examining the vinyl. There's something inscribed here. He tilted the disc to the light, revealing an intricate symbol, one eerily familiar from the journal. It's the mark of the Rake, I whispered. Mr. Thompson, having joined our gathering, paled. This record, it belonged to my grandfather. He always warned me about it, saying it held memories best forgotten. Sarah looked alarmed. Why do we have it then? Mr. Thompson hesitated. My grandfather and your great-grandfather were close friends. They shared an interest in the town's legends, especially the Rake. They believed in its power, not as a menace, but as a keeper of memories. As the night deepened, we sat around listening to Mr. Thompson's stories. We learned that the Rake, though feared, was also respected in older times. It wasn't just a creature of nightmares, but a guardian of the town's history. Perhaps, Sarah mused, our confrontation wasn't about defeating it, but understanding its purpose. A sense of responsibility weighed on us. The Rake, though feared, held a place in our town's legacy. Maybe our role wasn't to banish it, but to bridge the gap between the past and present. Embracing this newfound purpose, we decided to establish a town archive, a place where stories of the Rake, along with other legends, would be preserved. Instead of shunning our history, we would celebrate it, ensuring that future generations understood the balance between respect and fear. Our efforts culminated in the town's first Legends Festival, where tales of the past were shared, and the story of the Rake took its rightful place, not as a harbinger of doom, but as a reminder of our town's rich tapestry. The Legends Festival soon became an annual event, drawing visitors from neighboring towns and even distant cities. Our town, once stifled by the weight of the Rake's legend, flourished as a haven for history and folklore enthusiasts. Sarah, Ben and I, now in our final year of high school, took active roles in organizing the event. From designing the exhibits to conducting historical tours, we became the town's unofficial historians. One evening, as we sifted through new entries for the archive, I came across a letter sealed with the familiar mark of the Rake. Hesitating only for a moment, I opened it. The handwriting, elegant and dated, read, "To the brave souls who sought to understand, the Rake you know has served this land. But remember always, as guardians be, that history's weight falls now to thee, for tales untold and memories lost carry a heavy lingering cost. Ensure they're heard, let none decay, or the Rake shall rise once more to sway." We exchanged glances, realizing the gravity of our role. We weren't just organizers of a festival, we were custodians of memories, ensuring that history was never lost or forgotten. Years passed, and as college and careers beckoned, our trio temporarily parted ways. Sarah pursued anthropology, Ben went into filmmaking, and I delved into historical research. But every year, without fail, we returned to our town for the Legends Festival. Our bond remained unbroken, and as we grew, so did the archive. It became a renowned center for folklore studies, attracting scholars and enthusiasts worldwide. But we never forgot that eerie letter, a constant reminder of our duty. Decades later, as I sat in the very archive we had built, an eager young student approached me with a tattered journal in hand. "I found this in my attic," she began, excitement evident in her eyes. It speaks of the Rake. Smiling, I motioned her to sit. "Let me tell you a story," I began, "of three young souls, an old legend, and a town's journey from fear to enlightenment." And so the legacy continued with every tale told, ensuring the Rake's place not as a menace, but as a guardian of memories, and us as its eternal custodians.